And we are back, guys. Another full length episode for your Thursday. We start this episode by discussing the latest announcement from the Big Ten and ACC regarding college football this fall. We then debate and discuss some ideas that were thrown out to improve college football. And then, of course, we're going to move on to continue our recruiting re-rank, where we re-rank past recruiting classes. And today we analyze the ridiculous 2017 class. Guys, we are so excited to talk about this class because there's like 15 players that easily could have an argument to be in the top five. But, of course, we're going to end it with another recruiting update, and we go down to look at the Texas A&M Aggies and what they're doing down in College Station. We have a full show today, guys, so let's kick it off. So last Thursday, the Big Ten broke the news that all college football fans were probably dreading to hear. The Big Ten, which immediately was followed by the Pac-12, announced that their conferences would play only conference games this upcoming season. This caused marquee games such as Ohio State at Oregon, Alabama versus USC to be canceled. The ACC was reported to follow suit, but Commissioner John Swofford announced that no decision has been made yet. The SEC and Big 12 stand pat where they are. They have not made a final decision, and they want to see as what goes on as more information comes in and in regards to what their conferences will do next season. So, Brandon, here we are. What is your takeaway from this, and do you think this is the best plan moving forward?
Yeah, so I know the second that you said this is the plan that no college football fan wanted to hear, that kind of left me stunned a little bit. I mean, would you not love to see Auburn play a 12 or 13 game SEC season?
I would love – I mean, the SEC is different, though, because, you have so many contenders. But then you have conferences like the ACC where Clemson's probably going to beat everybody by an average of 30 to 40 points.
That's a good point, actually, because the ACC, that's just going to be fun for nobody. That's going to be like Clemson won't even have any fun. They're just going to be winning all the time. And while they do love doing that, and while Dabo does love doing what he does, he loves doing a lot of things. So we're not going to get into that in this episode. But he does love winning. I think it gets old at some point when you're just playing, Syracuse and Boston College and every other talent that the ACC has to offer.
And it just makes no sense to me, to be completely honest with you. You have teams. Brandon, let's take Florida State. There are two different conferences, but how much closer are those campuses to someone like, let's just say, Miami in the ACC and Boston College in the ACC?
Right, exactly. And the first one that came to my head was like, you want to talk about like Baylor going to play West Virginia in the Big 12. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Or even like a team, maybe like Washington State going to play Arizona. They're crossing the country to play. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's almost like the germs they think maybe like the coronavirus is just afraid of traveling outside of conference. I just don't know if that's the case. Now, have you seen the new face shields that I can't remember who. I think it was like Oakley made them.
Yeah, it was Oakley. I did see that. I actually did. And listen, if it gets us college football, I don't care what they have to do. I don't care if we have to play in hazmat suits. Like, let's get this season in.
Let's get it in. Heat strokes are abundant in hazmat suits.
That's also a fact, especially in Death Valley in August.
Yeah, have fun. It's not a lot of fun in South Louisiana right now. It's very hot, and I think August might even get hotter. I'm not sure. But so the only conferences that have announced that they'll be playing only in conference games, that's been the Big Ten and the Pac-12. Is that what you said?
Yeah, the ACC was reported to, but last I read, the ACC commissioner held off on it. He said that they haven't made a final decision, but if things stay the same, they will also play conference only.
Now, what I'm wondering is, the state of Louisiana, and I know this because, I'm here, so I can't report on other states, but I know that Louisiana has even come out and, high school football can't even be played until we're in phase 4. We're in phase 2 right now, just barely. We're about to move back to phase 1 if things keep going the way they're going. So how is it that state-funded high schools won't be able to play until phase 4, but somehow the state-funded university might be able to play in phase 1 or 2. That doesn't make a lot of sense
But,
to me, even if
but
they're only playing in conference.
well, it's because the state-funded colleges bring in billions of dollars to the state, while these state-funded high schools do not.
That's exactly. You keep
It's
getting me left and right.
it's all about money,
It's
man. I mean, it really really is. I mean, to be honest,
yeah, cash.
that's why I have full I guess confidence that we'll have a college football season. I mean, even Coach O has been echoing like that. It's gonna happen.
Oh, I know.
I,
He talked to Joe Biden about it yesterday.
yeah, I
Or not
mean
Joe Biden. He talked to
yeah.
yeah, he did.
No, it was Mike Pence. It was the VP.
Mike Pence, same guy.
Yeah. Yeah, same thing. But one's running against the president next election cycle.
It's the same guy. Don't even. It doesn't matter. Same guy.
But so I'm gonna take I don't know. I don't know how this opinion is going to come across. I'm going to try to explain it well. I'm sure some people are going to have a problem. Others are going to have my back with this. But I think this was just made way too early, Brandon. I mean, it's right now it's July 15th. When this announcement was made, it was what, July 9th, maybe 10th.
Right.
And why are we making decisions on something that's not happening till just about September right now? Why didn't all the conferences, I mean, I know the SEC had a big problem with the announcement because it was almost like the Big Ten pulled the rug out from these other conferences, because the last they talked on like Zoom or their conference call or whatever, everyone just agreed to wait it out and let's get more information and see what happens at the end of summer. So why are you just making a random decision that no one was expecting?
It's really funny. I really wish I was part of those closed door meetings on this too, because you know that it was something good. It was the Big Ten trying to be the Big Ten. They were trying to be better than every other conference. And they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make a big leap right here. And we're going to say we're only playing in conference, which is kind of what they were hoping for anyway, because have you ever seen the Big Ten play out of conference? It never really turns out well for them.
It doesn't. And okay, the best I guess phrase to put on this under is virtue signaling. That's what I think the basis of this comes from. Okay, Brandon, hear me out. So does it not look good on the Big Ten if things go south? Let's say, like you say, Louisiana, it goes back down to phase 1, things get really, really bad. The Big Ten can say, hey, we headed this off. We spearheaded the movement for no college football or restricted college football, and they get that credit instead of, hey, as a committee, we came together. I really think they were just trying to get ahead of it. And sometimes it's better to be a little bit early than late. And I think the SEC is going to be that conference that it's going to take something drastic for the SEC not to play football. And I think even some of the national analysts have said that, like, it's going to take something drastic, like a fatality on the field or something like that, for the SEC really to be, I guess, eyes open, because especially just because how big SEC football is. But this was a virtue signaling for me. This was trying to set the precedent. And I'm not a doctor by any means. When this first came out, me and Brandon said, we are not a doctor. We're not going to predict this virus and what it will do. We're not the CDC. Listen, guys, if you want to know if you should wear a mask or not or all this stuff, go look at the CDC. Don't come to the Bluebloods looking for medical advice here. But I do think we are going to have a season. And I really like, our last episode, I'm sure all of y'all listened. It was a great interview. One of my favorite, I think it was one of our best interviews with Cole Kublik. And I like what he said on Twitter recently, where eventually, okay, so Brandon, like, all the projections I've been reading said eventually when we do get a cure or something for this virus, it will end up being like the flu, where you can get it, but it'll be treatable and it'll just come and go as most viruses and most sicknesses do now, right? So Cole Kublik said eventually personal responsibility is going to have to become a factor. And he said that college football should go on. The students can sign a waiver. The fans can sign a waiver. And the fans and players who want to be there can just be there. And if that means you have to quarantine yourself, if that means you have to pay an extra premium, et cetera, then that's on you to decide. But eventually people are going to have to decide what they feel comfortable with doing. And I know he wasn't the only one to say it. I know there's a few other national analysts that backed him on this. And as much as I think people should be safe, and if you live with a sick family member, you probably shouldn't. But if you're just a college student, you just want to play football. And I think there's just too much to lose, Brandon. I mean, how many episodes ago did we talk about how much money the NCAA and just college football will lose across the country? It was probably 10 episodes ago when it was $4.3 billion.
Right.
That is that's a ridiculous amount of money, guys. And then you have the issue where me and Brandon talked about with scholarships. You can't give everyone an extra year of eligibility, because then what do you do with scholarship limits? How does a school who just lost millions of dollars find money to support the incoming class of recruits? They probably don't.
I mean,
the budgets are going to be all screwed up. And then, Brandon, I mean, we haven't probably talked about this directly on the podcast. We talked about this outside the podcast, and I know Kublik kind of brought it up when we were talking about paying players. Some of these players don't come for much, and they rely on their athletic prowess to have them housing for 9-10 months of the year.
Right.
You could be talking about some players not even having a place to live, because not everyone can go home to their parents. And
yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And it, while it does mess a lot of things, never mind. Zach, I'll let you continue. I've got another point to make, and I know. No, go ahead. No,
yeah, and the last point I just want to make, and then you can take it over, is that it kind of relates to this. It's the stipends that we talked about. Some of these players do rely on the $4,000, let's just say a month max, that they get every month while they're playing. They have $2,000 to live off of, put up in savings, and then they send $2,000 home back to their family. What happens when that's gone and they can't go back and live with their family? I know that we have to weigh the cost. There's always a cost analysis to every decision, especially with something like this. And we have to decide, is it worth losing $4 billion and putting a bunch of athletes and all this money on the line, or is it worth the risk? And I think that's what I think a lot of these ADs are doing right now.
Right. And from a financial aspect, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, absolutely. But if you want to look at it from a more, hey, this is a pandemic that maybe we came out of a little bit too early and people are catching again. I mean, Louisiana alone has been over 2,000 new cases a day. I want to say more than 5 times in the past 2 weeks, there have been 2,000 new cases every single day, because it's gotten to the point to where now there's a statewide mandatory mask mandate that's been reinstated. I know Alabama did the same. And
Kansas also did that.
Yeah. And so my question is, Mississippi just did it too. I think it starts tomorrow or today, if you're listening now. My question is, how do you prevent the spread of disease? I mean, if we're trying to combat that, how do we do that when we have 22 guys on a field at a time that not only aren't social distancing, but are just, straight up, they're all over each other. I mean, I get that football is a big financial driver, and it is an economic issue. It certainly is. But just to take, I guess to play devil's advocate to your argument, how do you prevent the spread of coronavirus if football is allowed to be played?
Okay, so hear me
out. Because not only, and I want to make one more point before you say anything.
Yeah, go ahead.
These billions of dollars that you're talking about that they're bringing in, how much of that is from ticket sales? How much is that from concession sales? How much is that from these people coming to visit and actually watch these games in person, putting money into the local economies? We're not – look, we have become an economic podcast, by the way. So we're going to start day trading before long if you haven't caught that already. But it's just getting weird. Quarantine's it's not even quarantine anymore. It should be, but it's not. Anyway, my question is, how much money are you really making? I get the TV deals, but other than that, how much money are you really making if you have a season?
I don't remember exactly. I had the number in my notes for the episode we did, and it's millions of ticket sales, man. LSU. Okay, so you're a season ticket holder for LSU. How much do you pay for your season tickets?
I feel like that's a little personal, but
Okay, dude, it's
I'm
easily
kidding.
can be looked
I'm
up.
kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's like $1,000.
$1,000. Okay, LSU Stadium was what 102, 3,000.
102, but it's close to 3. It's like
Okay,
102, 900, something like that.
yeah. Okay, so what tier would you rank your season tickets at? Are they the most expensive to the least expensive? Like, where would you put it on that
Oh
scale?
yeah, no, mine are probably the least expensive.
Okay, and you pay $1,000. How much money do you think LSU makes from just season ticket holders alone? Because those suites are easily hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right. No, you're absolutely right.
And so, like, there's a lot of money in just fan involvement. And, like, that's why the NFL right now, we're not NFL podcast, but they're talking about the salary cap dropping $60 million, and that's if they can play without fans.
Right.
That it's a lot of money in ticket
Right.
sales. And we also got to think about the community. How much money do you think someone like, this is the only restaurant I know in Baton Rouge. I'm sure you can name more, like Mike Anderson's. How much money do you think they would lose if LSU didn't have a football season? I'm
They make a
talking,
lot. Zach, you were here like what it was like 4 weeks ago, like a month
yeah,
ago. And how
yep,
many people were in Mike Anderson's besides us?
a handful.
Like nobody. It was just,
Yeah,
it was
it was
basically
like
just us.
probably like 8 people at max.
They make their
And
money on game days is where I'm going with that.
yeah, exactly. And so the thing that really, really gets me, I would say, is just so you want a strategy. Okay, so it is a pandemic, right? So we're seeing the NBA right now, and they're quarantining in the bubble. They're having a lot of problems. In case you haven't watched on the news, there's a snitch hotline. It's a whole thing.
A snitch hotline.
Yeah, snitches get stitches on the Bluebloods, so we don't support the snitch hotline. But okay, so Brandon, you said so these players. Okay, so let's say Oregon, Ohio State. Is Ohio State taking Delta Airlines in a major airport to get to Oregon?
No.
They're taking a team plane, right?
Right.
So that thing could be disinfected if the team stays in the team dorms or in the team athletic area. And we've seen Clemson, they have game rooms, they have practice, film study, and they'll have online classes so you can set it up where they can do classes in the athletic department. You can quarantine and just where your team stays with your team for the season. It's 3-4 months if you shorten it up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's doable. It's probably easier to quarantine for college football than it definitely is for the NFL.
Well, let me ask you this then. I mean, you went to Auburn and you've seen you've seen the athletic dorms there. I mean, most of the athletes stay at is it South Donahue?
Yeah, South Donahue.
Yeah, so it's South Donahue, but there are other students living there, right?
Yeah, but you can stop that. That's an easy fix. You just don't.
Yeah, and then the school loses money. Then the school is like, oh, well, we're losing a lot of money now because those are expensive dorms.
Well, even though colleges have announced that students will come out to campus, it's still kind of up in the air. I mean, let's be honest. And they still are trying to figure out how they're going to house students while still being able to kind of quarantine students. So I think they're already going to have reduced dorm space already. Let's be real here. I mean, yeah, there's some logistical issues to work out, but I just feel like I feel like there's a way to do it. I really, really do. I feel like there's too much on the line. And listen, yes, this is dangerous. This is a real issue here, but I just feel like you can't dismiss it. Like, so up here in Kansas, I mean, I'm a graduate student. There's not a lot of people up here who care about sports, to be completely honest with you guys. And I've heard people say, "Oh, it's just football. It's just this," and it's like it's really not. If you were educated about the situation, like I consider myself pretty educated. I mean, I have a whole podcast about it. We talk about this every day, even when we're not recording. Me and Brandon are constantly texting about the biggest things, like what do you think, all this stuff. And I mean, I've done the research here, and I really feel like that, like you're almost devaluing what those student athletes bring. It's like, it's just football. And it's like, no, man, like some of these kids, like this is their life. Like this is their way out. Like, how do you, how many high school kids, if there's not high school football this year, are going to miss out on a breakout star who could have made it to the NFL and just never got a scholarship because he didn't get a chance to. He grew 6 inches over summer from junior to senior year.
Yeah, I mean, that's
You
a
know,
good point.
it's just for me. I think the benefits outweigh the risk here. Like, and I think even I forgot who it was on Fox Sports. Someone said this. I was listening to him. I mean, this age group, what is it, 18 to 23? Maybe the 27-year-old third string quarterback you got that went and played baseball and came back. One of those situations like a Brandon Weeden.
Well, he was a first string, but
okay. But it's just that age group is the least susceptible to the virus, correct? That is a fact. That's what the CDC said. That's what all the reports are coming out, is that they are least susceptible to it. They're in shape, they're young, they're healthy, all this kind of stuff. And like Kublick and other people have said, if you don't want to play, don't play. That's fine. If Bo Nix came out today and said, I don't feel comfortable playing, that's great. But
yeah.
What about the kids who want to play and have to play? That's who I'm trying to think of here. And so I think there's a lot of logistical stuff. I just personally think that they made a decision too quick, and I think they should have thought about it more. And I like what the SEC and Big 12 did, and they said, we're going to wait for more information. Our deadline is not today. The deadline is probably beginning of August, and then we'll make a decision.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, I do think that this probably needed more time for a decision to be made on either end. I mean, whether that be, hey, we're going to play in conference, hey, we're going to play a regular schedule, or hey, we're not going to play. The more time should have been taken. There's a lot of time between now and when the season starts, and I feel like that time could have been used more wisely.
Completely agreed. But guys, we're going to move on. We murdered that topic. But we're going to move on to this is probably a hot take, I guess. I don't know. But Colin Cowherd of Fox Sports, he does the herd. I know, Brandon, you need to put your biases aside for this one here. He jokingly announced last week that he is going to run for president of college football. And he had Joel Klatt on. He laid out 6 things that he would immediately implement in college football to improve the game. I'm going to take this one point at a time. Me and Brandon are going to respond, give our take on whether this would actually improve college football. Brandon, keep your biases aside. We're going to go through this one by one. Can't. First, no more neutral site games.
Hate it. Already hate this. Neutral site games are the backbone of college football. Big fan, always. As a matter of fact, LSU this season was supposed to play a neutral site game against Rice at NRG Stadium in Houston. Keep in mind, Rice, I believe, plays at NRG Stadium in Houston. So I don't know what that's about, but it is a neutral site game apparently. But I love it. I mean, it's kind of cool.
Except it was against Rice, but I mean,
yeah, that kind of sucks.
I mean, we disagree here. I actually really like this idea. Because Brandon, the location always favors one of the teams. When you look at USC, Bama, Auburn, Oregon, and Dallas, it's clear advantage to the Southern teams. It's not even close. And then Georgia, North Carolina, and Atlanta.
No, that was stupid. I'll admit that.
And Auburn, Washington, and Atlanta? I wonder which one's closer. Auburn took a bus. Washington took a whole day to fly there.
Okay.
It's just
took
not
the Oregon
there.
Trail.
And, I mean, I think teams should have to schedule home and home series with their opponents. I mean, Brandon, USC, Bama was not as hype of a game as Oregon, Ohio State, and Eugene. How much more hype would you be if Bama was going to play USC in LA?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a lot better. But, I mean, there's another side of that argument, too, where, I mean, do you want a team like – who did Ole Miss just schedule a home and home with? I think it was a school in Virginia. I want to say like Liberty or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is that what you want? You want Ole Miss to go play Liberty at Liberty? Their stadium holds like 1,200 people.
Well, okay. Well, listen. The point number 2 will take care of that. But no, I'm talking about the marquee games. Like we're talking about Auburn, Oregon, LSU, Texas. LSU, Texas. If that game was in Jerry World or in Atlanta, would you be as excited to see LSU go to Texas or Texas come to Death Valley?
No, I get what you're saying. If maybe they played like in Dallas at Jerry World and then they played in the Superdome, no, it wouldn't be nearly as good. I mean, it's obviously going to be better, in Baton Rouge or Austin.
That's a fact. And so his point here was that NFL owners are billionaires. They don't need the extra money,
Good point.
but college towns depend on that money. And how much more money do you think LSU made that weekend or is going to make having Texas come in this year? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, a lot. Yeah, that's a good point.
And so
Colin, don't make me like you all of a sudden. Don't do that to me.
So yeah, I approve point number 1. He gets my vote here on this one. I'm not a fan of neutral site games. I would much rather have seen Auburn travel to Eugene or Oregon come to Auburn and Jordan-Hare. It would have been that would have really, really got me worked up. But we're gonna get a point number 2 here. Brandon, only one quote unquote cupcake game a year.
Well, okay, how do you enforce that? I want to know how you enforce that.
I mean, the NCAA has the power. I mean, you can make people schedule a certain amount. Like you can.
No, but the thing is, how do you call a team a cupcake? How do you look at a team and go, oh, too many cupcakes?
Okay, so I think
another team that's in the NCAA. You can't do that if you're the NCAA.
I think he meant like non-Power 5 is what I think. If I remember right, what he classified as cupcake. So like LSU playing, who did they play? I forgot who. Like what Northwestern State out of or Northeastern or something like that.
It's Northwestern State, and it's in Louisiana. It's Coach O's alma mater. It was a good game.
Okay, it was okay. So that was your one cupcake game. So that means you get rid of Utah State and you play
Utah
Washington.
State's Power 5. No, they're not Power 5. I'm sorry. They're
not.
D1 though.
Yeah,
they're
but
D1.
Power 5 is what he would replace it with.
So what are your exceptions then? I mean, because independent schools aren't Power 5. So does that mean that they
hang on, time
can't
out.
schedule?
Time out. Point number 3 is no more independence. You have to join a conference. So that takes care of that.
See, I hate this. And you could have just not mentioned Colin Cowherd's name, and I still would have hated it. This is awful. Why no independent?
Because Notre Dame should join a conference.
No, well, they did, except for football.
Yeah, they need to join one in football. I think this should just say you cannot be in the college football playoff if you're not in a conference.
Yeah, stupid though, because then you have schools like UConn who just got kicked out of their conference. They're homeless.
That's because they suck. That's because they suck.
Well, what if they get really good next year, Zach? Out of nowhere, get really
join
good.
A conference.
Should they not be able? They can't just join a conference. You have to be invited to a conference, Zach. I'm going to teach you how this works one day. But you don't just join a conference.
That is their fault for being so bad. They got kicked out of a non-Power 5 conference, Brandon.
Okay, well.
That's what you get for trying to start a rivalry with a school that doesn't recognize that you're their rival.
Yeah, everyone loves the civil conflict, so just leave that one alone. But
so, let's just take a team like Auburn. I mean, they played Kent State, Tulane, and Samford, right?
Yeah.
Keep Samford. That's an in-state school. They deserve the payday. So, Auburn, Alabama, try to schedule a UAB, a Samford, a South Alabama, etc. LSU, you can schedule your Northeastern game or whatever it is. I hate Northwestern. I don't like that, but every SEC team has the week before rivalry week has been dreadful for the SEC. The best game is always Missouri and Kentucky.
Okay.
I mean, do you like LSU playing 3 games that no one really cares about? You liked watching them play Utah State?
I had a good time watching them play Utah State this past season, Zach. I'll be honest.
Is it just because they won?
Yeah, well, maybe. And I also got to see Jordan Love, and I got to watch Joe Burrow. I mean, just show everybody what he's made of. And
Against
Zach, I want
Utah
to ask you
State.
a question because you mentioned Auburn playing 3 cupcakes in Samford, Tulane, and another school. How big of a cupcake really was Tulane for Auburn, Zach?
Okay. Tulane might not be a cupcake because I think the AAC should be a Power 6 conference, and I've said that. But I didn't enjoy watching them play Kent State or Sanford.
Well, yeah, I mean, you wanted them to play Samford. You said that.
Well, okay, that's the in-state school, but I would much rather if you take Kent State and Tulane off and they play Michigan and let's say Virginia Tech. It's way more interesting games for me, and I'll sign me up for it every week.
Okay.
I mean, the only reason I say allow one is because yes, those schools do rely on the payday. I mean, Southern Miss, how much do they get paid to play Auburn? What
Probably
was
a
it, 2
lot.
years ago? It was like up $1.2 million. That is
That's
an
a lot of money.
extraordinary amount of money, and so I think
That's like,
it. I don't know. Okay,
go
so
ahead.
I'm gonna say one just because of the payday. I don't know. I just think it should be one because of the payday, and I think I think we do need to define cupcake like you said. I mean, I think games against non-power fives are fine to me. His point was not because I mean you have teams like Cincinnati, Memphis, Boise State, Appalachian State. Are those easy games? Why don't you go ask South Carolina if Appalachian State was a cupcake?
Yeah, so I'm saying. I mean, you're making my point for me. Thank you.
But I'm just saying they should play. I think the AAC should already be. And I think Boise State should definitely be in the Pac-12. I mean, are we kidding? How many years in a row has Boise State won the Mountain West? 20.
Quite a few.
Yeah, and so let's get down to 4 because we disagree on the independent thing. I don't know why you don't want to see Notre Dame in the ACC or Big Ten, but that's outrageous. But this brings us to 4, a universal conference schedule. So right now the Pac-12 plays 9 games, SEC plays 8, Big 10 plays 9, I believe, Big 12 plays 8, I believe, ACC plays 8. So he said all conferences should play a 10-game conference schedule.
Okay. I do like that. I'll admit I like that one.
See, I would say 9 because that leaves you 9 conference games.
See,
No,
being
listen,
difficult.
listen.
We can't agree on one thing.
Listen, okay, I already have this broken down. I've said this on previous episodes. I like 9 conference games, 2 Power 5 games, and 1 cupcake or 1 like local school.
Yeah, I mean, you keep calling it a cupcake. Someone's going to be upset at the end of this episode.
Yeah, that's fine. If you root for Sanford, South Alabama, anyone like that, your school's a cupcake. Your coach,
Well,
South Alabama's coach has won 2 games in 4 years.
I mean, that's a good point.
That's a cupcake.
I don't know if you can call it a cupcake. Call it something else. Be politically correct.
I don't want to be politically correct. A cupcake is perfect, but we've talked about 5 before, Brandon. We'll just clear this up. He said the college football playoff has to stay at only 4 teams. His idea was, he said that never once has the number 5 team ever been looked at and said, oh, they deserve a shot at the title. And I disagree because Ohio State in 2018 deserved a shot at the national title. Dwayne Haskins and that team deserved a chance at the title, and I will die on this hill. You don't think Alabama this year, even with Mac Jones, wouldn't have competed for a national title? You don't think Oregon this year would have competed?
I think especially if Tua was back. I mean, I know you said Mac Jones, but especially if Tua was back, good Lord.
Exactly. So you're telling me that Alabama with Tua wasn't going to beat Oklahoma in Atlanta?
Yeah. I mean, you're right.
I would give Alabama a shot against Clemson and Ohio State last year. 1,000%.
Right.
Would it have helped if they had Dylan Moses? Probably, but I'm still taking that wide receiving core. I mean, we saw what LSU's receiving core did to Clemson's secondary. You don't think Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith wasn't going to do that?
No, they would.
Yeah, so I mean, I've already given my proposal on this podcast. I said 12 is a complicated thing. There was bye weeks involved. I don't want to break it down for y'all again. Go check the episode out. Brandon, what did you say? 8 or something when we did it?
8. Yep, 8.
Yeah, I like 8. I mean, I think 4 is. I get the sentiment, but diehard college football people who analyze the game more so than just a national host like that. There's always a team that's like, ooh, if they would have got in, it would have been something serious. I mean, even LSU in 2018, Joe Burrow's first year, you don't think they would have put up a fight?
No, they would have. I mean, maybe not. maybe
I mean,
not. But
okay, so like everyone looks at so this year, I don't know if you could take it into account because I think LSU was going to win it regardless. I mean, let's be honest. LSU was going to beat anybody you put in front of them. But take LSU out of the equation. Are you telling me how much of a difference are you really saying that Oklahoma, Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, Utah, Oregon, and Georgia, how big of the margin was it between those teams?
Not big. Not very
Not big? Okay. The only one I could see is maybe if you say, hey, Clemson has Trevor Lawrence, so there's a Trevor Lawrence-sized gap. I'd give you that. But the other teams,
right?
It would just depend on where the game was and how they played that day. I think 4 teams is a little short-sighted there. I think it just shows that you didn't break down. I mean, I would say there's always 8 to 10 teams that could win the national title every year. I really do. And there's always some dark horses.
See, you threw 12 in there because that was your plan, but I think 8. I think 8's solid.
There's always 8. Some years there's 12. How about that? We'll leave it at that.
That's okay. I'll give
Brandon,
it to you.
I know you're going to hate this last one. Oh, this is about to be bad. He said there should only be 12 bowl games a year.
Yeah. He's done for. He's off. I'm not talking about him anymore.
And they're all big bowl games. It's like the Cotton Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Orange Bowl, Sugar Bowl. Rose Bowl.
Colin Cowherd's just rooting for less football?
Yes. He said
he wants less football.
He said he's tired of hearing the argument that the bowl games help the little guy because the little guy's never going to be anything.
That's ridiculous.
He said someone like a Toledo could never be to Alabama, so why do we care?
I don't know, man. I don't like that at all. Not even a little bit.
You sure?
Yeah, no, I'm positive. I'm not a big fan of 12 bowl games, Zach. No.
I mean, that's ridiculous, right? 12 bowl games? Like, you're telling me, 24 teams only deserve a chance at a bowl game?
To even play in the postseason? I want my regular, how many bowl games are there? There's like a million of them.
It's like, 30 or 40 of them now?
Yeah, I will actually want more bowl games. I want teams to become bowl eligible at like 4 wins. That way I can
just have everybody. We have 130 teams in FBS. Just everyone makes a bowl game. Like, let's just.
That's so much bonus football that I mean, it would be the best day of my life. If we only had 12 bowl games, that's getting like taken care of in a weekend. I can't do that. That's not going to work for me.
If all 130 made it, it'd be 65 bowl games a year. I mean, who wouldn't tune into the loser bowl between the 2 0-12 teams to see who is the worst team in college football? Yeah. I'd watch it.
I'm going to watch the loser bowl. Yeah.
I want put that in primetime. ABC, Kurt Hurtstreet, and Reese Davis are calling that game. Put it in the Rose Bowl. Make it the spectacle. We got South Alabama versus Maine. It's happening.
Okay. Oh, you know what I want? I want the worst D1 FBS team to have to play the best Division III football team. That's the bowl game I want.
Dude, North Dakota State is smacking even like a 50th ranked team in D1.
They're not D3. They're D2.
Oh, they're D2, yeah.
Or FCS.
I don't know.
They're not D3.
I mean, you could even have an extra bowl game. The champion of D2 plays the champion of FBS. I'm watching it. I know what's going to happen. But let's say Tua gets hurt in the national championship again. I don't know. Trey Lance might step up. North Dakota State steals one from old Nick Saban.
Old Nicky. Old St. Nick.
Old St. Nick loses one to North Dakota State. I mean, North Dakota State's beaten a really good teams before. I mean, we've had 3 straight NFL quarterbacks come from there. I mean, it's outrageous. But bowl games, guys, money for smaller teams. That's important. I don't care what anyone says. What about the cities? Listen, we're both from Mobile. The GoDaddy Bowl, that's a big deal. Shockingly. I know it does.
Lending Tree.
Yeah, Lending Tree, my bad. I mean, dude, how fun is it to go to Boca Raton for a bowl? I mean, players love the attention. They love to travel. The Bahama Bowl? Sign me up. A free trip to the Bahamas, and when I'm 22, a senior, my last college game's in the Bahamas, I will sign that field trip form every day of my life. And
that field trip form.
And a lot of these teams, maybe they didn't have the great season, but they get to cap it off with a fun trip with their teammates that they'll never get to play with again, most likely. You're going to take that away because the little guy doesn't matter?
Yeah,
that's outrageous. I mean, he missed the mark here. I mean, just because Toledo can't beat Alabama means we shouldn't have a few more bowl games. I get it if you were like, hey, there might be too many. Okay, I see where you're coming from. But what about a team like, I'm trying to think, Utah in 2004 with Urban Meyer? They went undefeated and was number 3 in the country.
Right.
What about Boise State for the entire 2000s? Beating Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. You don't think Boise State would at least stay competitive in the national championship? You can't convince me they wouldn't that year.
No, they would be. They absolutely would be. Statue of Liberty, you got to be kidding me. They win that every single time.
Yeah, and then Cincinnati and Memphis are really, really good. I mean, there's UCF. I mean, say what you want about them, but that team was decent.
Yeah.
I mean,
I said what I thought about them. I loved them.
I mean, the little guy might not always matter, but there's moments. Ask Michigan what happened when Appalachian State came to the Big House.
Yeah, nothing good for Michigan.
Yeah, and Brandon, the thing that separates college football for me outside of the NFL, the NBA, et cetera, is, man, there's nothing better than college football upsets.
That's what I'm saying.
It's really not. I mean, no one cares if the Browns beat the Patriots. It's okay, NFL teams, there's never blowouts. There's never a team if you look at just the point spreads, if you want to look at it betting wise, how have you ever seen an NFL spread over 20?
No, I haven't. Maybe a Dolphins game.
Okay, that's because Dolphins are just leave them alone. Keep them out of this.
Okay.
But Howard last year over UNLV, they were a 51-point underdog and won. Yeah, you can't get that anywhere else. No, who's the worst team in the NBA right now? The Hawks. If they beat the Golden State Warriors, or they beat the Golden State Warriors when Kevin Durant was there, no one really cares. It's just this is a professional league. It's just college football special, man, and I don't want to see it torn down. So I agree with a few things, but the little guy always matters in college football, and that's how I'm going to roll with it. But, guys, we're going to move on here. We have ranted those first 2 segments. Holy crap.
Yeah.
We're going to move on. Brandon and I are going to re-rank each recruiting class each year since 2013. We've done a few of these now. But, guys, just a heads up, in case you're new, in case you haven't caught the last few episodes, which catch up. Don't be slacking. Don't listen to this one when you ain't listening to others. Go catch up real quick. We will only reanalyze the top 100 recruits, pick the top 5 players from there because there's a lot of players, guys. This episode, we're going to look at the 2017 class. This was headlined by Jalen Phillips. Probably he made my biggest college football bust list of all time. That's tough. And Najee Harris, who is still dominating college football today. He has really good odds for the Heisman this year. So that shows you how wide this class is. So, Brandon, you know how this goes. I want to say this, though, Brandon. Before we get into – I usually let you start with your 5th recruit. I just want to say this. I know you agree with me. This class is by far – we say this every episode. I know, but I mean it this time. This class was by far the deepest I think we've ever analyzed.
Yeah, this one honestly might have been. It really rivals that 2015 class that we spent forever on, and it's so hard for me to choose. It was hard for me to choose these five players. Um, so yeah, I'll go. I guess I'll go.
It's insane.
Yeah,
Hang on. I just want to say, guys, I had 15 players I thought deserved consideration for a top five. I believe 12 to 13 of those were taking in the first two rounds of the NFL draft this past season, and the other two are projected first rounders for next year. That's how bad this is. But I have some honorable mentions, but I'm gonna let Brandon go first. I don't want to steal his thunder. So Brandon, throw us your number 5 player.
We're all stealing thunder in this segment. Guys, I wanted to go ahead and preface this and say, while I do believe that there were at least 2 offensive linemen that deserve to make this list, I left them off. I left them off because they don't have stats, and I guess it would cut my segment short if I did list them. But just know that Andrew Thomas and Alex Leatherwood for sure both deserve to be on this list, but they're not going to be on my list. I'm going to go with only skill players here. So with my number 5 player on this list, I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins out of Ohio State. J.K. Dobbins, I mean, what an insane career. Obviously capped off by this previous season where he rushed for over 2,000 yards. I mean, he rushed for 2,003 yards this past season on 301 attempts. I mean, he averaged 6.1 yards per carry. Over his 3 years at Ohio State, he averaged over 6 yards a carry. That was marqueed by his freshman season where he scored rushed for 7.2 yards a carry. I mean, it's any season that you rush for over 2,000 yards is spectacular, and he did it. He only did it once. He was a 3-year starter at Ohio State. I mean, had 3 fantastic seasons, but I have to put him on my list just because I believe that he was one of, if not the best running back in this class.
He's okay. So he's probably the best running back in this class. This class is so loaded. He wasn't even. He couldn't have made my top 5. That's
really okay.
Yes, and I feel so bad. This might kind of ruin the surprise of my picks for at least Brandon. Maybe not for people listening, but my list only consists of 2 schools, and I hate both of these schools, and so I literally wanted to hate my segment so much.
Okay.
I almost called in 6 of the podcast today, guys. I worked a hard day. Got home. We're about to do the podcast. I look at my list, and I'm just like, you know what? I quit. I'm just done with this segment. I'm done with this podcast. But no, I can't leave y'all hanging. But Brandon, at 5, I have Jeff Okudah.
Okay.
He's decent, I guess. I mean, the fact that Jeff Okudah was drafted 3rd overall in the draft, but he's only 5th in his own recruiting class is a little bit outrageous. I mean, there's some studs above him, though, guys. And listen, Okudah was a 2-year starter at Ohio State, and this is a school where playing time at a skill position like cornerback is hard to come by. He still found a way to start for 2 years. He even got some time early. He had 83 total tackles, only 3 interceptions. He had 18 passes defended, 2 fumble recoveries, and 1 forced fumble. Listen, I know these stats might not blow you away. I got you. But I've been trying to educate some people who've come at me for my DB picks here. Listen, like I said with Jalen Ramsey a few episodes back, you can't judge a defensive back based solely on tackles or interceptions. I mean, a good legendary DB shuts down one side of the field. And I heard a saying that put it in perspective for me about DBs. I was watching a football game, and the announcer said, you can tell a cornerback is having a perfect game when if it's over, you realize you didn't call his name the entire game.
Right.
He just disappears. You don't even know he's on the field. That means the quarterback was terrified to even throw his way the entire game. And that's what Okudah encompassed for me. He had 0 penalties called on him throughout this entire last season, Brandon. Not one single pass interference, not a single holding. And he was a consensus All-American, a finalist for the Thorpe Award. Somehow Grant Delpit got it. We've discussed this. As much as we were Grant Delpit fans, he did not deserve it this year. That was more of a
That was
career
cool.
achievement award for him. And Jeff Okudah and Derek Stingley both deserved it more than Grant Delpit. Stingley wasn't even a finalist. Okudah came in second. Okudah probably should have got it over Delpit. That's not the debate here, though. For me, Okudah is probably going to go down as one of the best DBs to ever suit up for the Buckeyes. He deserves a spot in the top 5, but there's just too many unbelievable talents in this class. And that brings me to my number 4 player. Brandon, you said you had no offensive lineman. There's one I couldn't leave off the list, and that's Mr. Alex Leatherwood at Alabama. Offensive tackle. He was originally the 4th-ranked recruit in the class. Guys, offensive linemen never get the respect they deserve, do they? I mean, you have people like Brandon. They don't have any stats. Well, it don't matter. Leatherwood deserves this top 5 spot here, and here's why. Listen, I also will say this. I know he's still playing, but he would have been a top 10 pick in this year's draft. Even Brandon has acknowledged that. Alex Leatherwood is legit. Actually met him on his visit to Auburn. Thought he might come to Auburn. I was told by another Auburn player there was no way he wasn't going to Alabama, so it kind of broke my heart. I'm still hurt by it. But guys, he played in 7 games as a freshman at Alabama under Nick Saban. Do you know how hard it is for a freshman to get starting time on the offensive line? Alabama was O-line U for some people. And he stepped into it. Jonah Williams got hurt. He stepped in and played the national championship and helped that team win in 2017 and graded out at an 88% success rate against probably the best Georgia defense of all time. And so not only did you have Tua come in, you also had a freshman tackle step in against Georgia. And then his sophomore season, Brandon, he's always played tackle. They move him to guard. He's an all SEC second team pick, started all 15 games, didn't allow a sack in 11 of the 15 games, and also had, I believe it was 8 games where not a single pressure was applied to the quarterback from his spot. And that's in the SEC, facing some of the best defensive linemen in the country. And this brings me all to last season. He finally gets to move back to left tackle. He is a first-team All-American, first-team All-SEC. Brandon graded out at 89% for the entire season. The entire season they played, I believe it was 14 games for Alabama, or 13 because they didn't make the SEC championship this year, but 13 games. He allowed 2 sacks and only 3 hurries the entire season. That's it. He missed 7 assignments in 752 snaps. He only missed 7. That's like 99.4% success rate. And guys,
you had the stats.
Yeah, and you say, why does this matter? He faced Derek Brown, top 10 pick. Javon Kinlaw, what was the first round pick? Clavon Chason, first round pick. Rashard Lawrence, NFL draft pick. Marlon Davidson, second round draft pick. That's the type of talent that he's facing week in and week out. And you're telling me like it's not super impressive? Leatherwood is probably the second best offensive lineman in college football today. Penei Sewell, listen, no one's on his level. Alex Leatherwood is right there behind him. And he's going to be a top 10 pick in the draft next year. And Leatherwood is legit, and Leatherwood deserved the top 5 spot here.
Right. And like I said, if he had the stats that I could talk about during this segment, Zach, you apparently did a lot more research than I ever could about Alex Leatherwood, so props. But I'm going to talk about another player from the same team, like Zach said. We're looking at Alabama again. And I'm going to go to the other side of the ball here. And it's a player that I think is probably, he is – you talked about Najee Harris earlier being maybe the favorite for Heisman. I think that you're right. He didn't make the cut for my list. He was so close, but I need to see one more season out of him. But who did make my list was Dylan Moses, and I am looking forward to this upcoming season for him. He's the missing piece that everyone talked about for Alabama's defense this past year. And if you look at his previous stats, you'd understand why. His sophomore season alone, he was a 15-game starter that year. From the first snap of the season until the national championship. And over that period of time, he had 45 solo tackles. He had 41 assisted tackles for 86 total tackles, 10 of those for loss, 3.5 sacks, I mean, he's an absolute terror on the field. And I can't wait to see what he does next season. And the reason I brought Najee Harris up is because I think that he and Dylan Moses honestly have potential to go in the top 10. I mean, in the NFL draft this upcoming season. They're both that talented. Dylan Moses might be, I'm not going to say the best linebacker in the country right now because Michael Parsons is still playing, but he's certainly up there. And so that's why he's going to make my list at number 4. But moving forward, and Zach, you might have said it best when you talked about how we didn't really want to do this segment because it's going to be dominated by 2 schools. Yet another player that terrorized me for at least 1 year, almost another year. I'm going to have to go with Tua. I won't say his last name. Shout out first episode of the podcast. I messed that up pretty badly. Had to censor myself. We're still here. But Tua, I mean, had an absolutely insane career at Alabama. I mean, his sophomore season, he came in, I mean, started the entire year, 69% completed, 69% completion on passes, nearly 4,000 yards passing. I feel like people don't talk about that nearly enough. I know how good he is. I know people do talk about that, but they don't talk about how far he passed for that season. Even this past season, only played 9 games, and some of those games, I think 2 of them, maybe 3, he had to leave early with injury. He still passed for nearly 3,000 yards. I mean, he averaged over 11 yards per pass over the past 2 seasons, over nearly 11 over his entire career. He passed for 87 touchdowns at Alabama. And I haven't even started talking about rushing yet. And I don't know. This guy is just incredible. I think that I don't want to say he was like a diamond in the rough because he wasn't. I mean, people knew he was going to be good coming out of high school. Obviously, if Alabama's going after you, you're probably going to be something pretty good. But he wasn't like in the top 10 of this class or anything. So in that respect, I guess you could say that. I think he definitely deserves a spot on this list, and that's why I have him at number 3.
I can't believe I'm at 3. He'll come up later in my list. I don't want to say where he is, but he's definitely above 3. That's outrageous.
Okay.
But I guess 3 for me is going to have to be Chase Young, Ohio State defensive lineman. He was originally 7th. And, when you finish top 5 in the Heisman voting as a DN, you could just say you're elite. I mean, he did that this past season with the number 4 finish. He dominated in 3 years in Columbus, guys. I mean, 98 total tackles, 40 for loss, 30.5 sacks, 8 passes defended, 9 forced fumbles. 9 forced fumbles. Are you kidding me? I mean, he led the Big Ten in sacks in 2018 and 19, and that ranks 9th in the Big Ten, and it ranks ninth in the NCAA and 1st in the Big Ten. That's just insane. I mean, he's 19th in NCAA history in total sacks, while that ranks number 2 in Big Ten history. I mean, you want awards for your defensive lineman? Big Ten Player of the Year, Nagurski Award winner, Bednarik Award winner, Ted Hendricks Award winner, and a consensus All-American. But what else do you need from a guy? The only criticism I have is he seems to disappear in big games. See the Fiesta Bowl from this year. He had, a tackle and a half against Clemson. He didn't even come close to touching Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion. And, even though that, he was one of the most explosive DNs to step on the field. He made our all-decade team. And he's going to go down as one of the best Ohio State players of all time, not just defensive players. Oh, man. And 2, I don't want to even do this, Brandon. For 2, I have Jerry Jeudy, Alabama wide receiver, originally 21st.
Boo, 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 boo. No, Zach, wrong.
That is not wrong. But in my opinion, this is one of the best wide receivers of our time, and he gets overlooked due to what team he played on and where he played. He was, let's just say, overshadowed by Tua, by Devontae Smith, and just the fact that it's like, oh, it's Alabama. Everyone's good at Alabama. Ask Tyrell Shavers, who just left Alabama, if everyone's good at Alabama. For me, Judy's route running is what really stands out for me. He's probably one of the most talented route runners I've seen. He plays with excellent game speed. His 40-yard dash isn't going to blow you away, but when he steps on that field, he can run. I see the Duke game where he took off and outran everybody to the end zone and then did a front flip into the end zone. I mean, this dude's athletic, fast, and in his time at Bama, he put up ridiculous stats: 159 catches, over 2,700 yards, 26 touchdowns. Brandon, over his college career, he averaged 17 yards per catch. Every single time he touched the ball, he got almost 2 first downs. I mean,
Zach, I know.
It's just, I don't know, man. I mean, in 2018 and 19, he was top 5 in the SEC in receptions, yards, and receiving touchdowns. He led the SEC and was number 3 in the country with 14 receiving touchdowns in 2018. In his career, he's top 22 in career receiving yards and yards per reception, and 11th in receiving touchdowns. And that's only in 2 full years. Imagine if he had 3 or 4. You'd be talking about a top 10 player and everything. He was a consensus All-American, won the Biletnikoff in 2018. And for me, guys, this might piss off some people. Jerry Jeudy is the best Alabama wide receiver of all time, and he's good, and he should go down as one of the best SEC receivers of all time.
Okay, I mean, bold take by Zach right there, but I like it. I really do.
I don't know, man.
But I'm going to continue on to mine. I mean,
who you got at number 2?
I have Chase Young. Young. You have him at 3. I have him at 2. I think he deserved a little bit better than you gave him. I'm not even going to sit here and talk about him because I do want to talk about my number 1, and this is the reason that I booed Zach, because Jerry Jeudy should have been number 1 on this list because he's a million. He's so much of a better player than Tua. I mean, by a million.
Who said Tua was number 1?
You don't have Tua at number 1? You said you bring him up later in your list.
I know, I'm messing with you. Yeah, Tua's number 1 for my list. You can
that's ridiculous.
You can break down Jeudy. I'll break down Tua after. I'll explain why
I don't have a lot of breaking down to do.
That's true. I just broke it down for you. Then
you kind of broke it down for me. My main thing was that every single time he touched the ball, he got 17 yards. And that was brought down this season. This season, he only had 15 yards a catch. Over his first 2 seasons, he had 18.9 his freshman year and 19.3 yards per catch his junior year. Over 68 catches, over 1,315 yards. He had 19.3 yards per catch. And I'm slowing it down for people like Zach, who obviously don't understand the greatness of this player. I know he said that he is the best wide receiver in Alabama football history. That's tough to say. That's very tough to say, especially when Julio Jones went to Alabama. But I will say, if Jerry Jeudy isn't the best, he's the second best, right behind Julio Jones. But no, I mean, Alabama is really doing something big about putting out receivers with it, and their initials are just JJ. They're really good at that. That's like their specialty.
Listen, I really, really wanted to put Jeudy as number 1. Everyone on this podcast knows. Everyone knows how much I like Jerry Jeudy. As much as it pains me, there's really only one logical choice for the number 1 spot on this list. I mean, and it's Tua Tagovailoa, and it's because he's easily the best Alabama quarterback of all time, and easily probably a top 5 quarterback of all time in the SEC. I feel like you have to. I mean, as much as I don't like him, it's a fact. But Brandon, only 2 full years as a starter, he shattered records. I mean, you talk about his almost 70% completion percentage, over 7,000 yards passing, 87 touchdowns to only 11 interceptions. Only 11. And he had 9 rushing touchdowns to add to that. Listen, guys, he's number 1 in SEC history, Brandon, in passing yards per attempt, passer efficiency rating, which also he has the number 1 passer efficiency rating in NCAA history.
That's crazy.
And he's number 1 in SEC history in total yards per play. He's top 10. He was top 10, Brandon, in the SEC both seasons in completions, attempts, completion percentage, passing yards, yards per attempt, passing touchdowns, passing efficiency, total yards per play, and touchdowns responsible for. Top 10 every single season he was a full starter, even his injury-prone year this year.
I mean, yeah, and there's a reason to my list. I just thought number one.
Yes, I mean, he also dominated the award circuit. Listen, a consensus All-American, Maxwell Award winner, SEC Offensive Player of the Year, Walter Camp Player of the Year. Listen, Tua Tagovailoa was one injury in the SEC Championship against Georgia away from winning the Heisman. If he stays healthy and plays a normal game for him, he wins the Heisman. But he goes out first quarter after a bad game because he was hurt, while Kyler Murray came back, beat Texas in overtime, and had an outstanding game, and that's where he won the Heisman. I told people after that weekend,
Okay.
Tua's not winning the Heisman. Kyler Murray stole it this weekend. If Tua throws for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that's an average game for him that season, he wins the Heisman. I guarantee it. He wins the Heisman there. And for me, he was one of the most dominant players in SEC history. Listen, I cannot stand Alabama. I can't stand Tua just because I'm an Auburn fan, and he beat the living hell out of us when he played us. And he did all this, Brandon, against the steepest competition possible in the country, and while playing with just unbelievable, a mountain of expectations on his shoulder. I mean, there's no bigger there's no more pressure than it is being the Alabama quarterback while Nick Saban's at Alabama. It just, if you don't go undefeated, there's fans that say, hey, you should just lose the scholarship. He lost a game. It don't matter if you lost it to Georgia, Auburn, Clemson. It's like, hey, this is Alabama. We expect greatness. And
right,
this is why he's number one for me, Brandon, okay? Like, Alabama's had someone like Julio Jones, who is right up there with Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy was never the sole reason Alabama took that next step. Listen, to take a program that everyone thought was at the pinnacle of college football and somehow take it to even higher or just further heights, that speaks to his impact on college football. We haven't seen a player since, I would say, probably Cam Newton or Tim Tebow elevate a team like Tua did. Everyone said, Bama's a dynasty, Bama's this. How much scarier was Alabama when Tua Tagovailoa came on the field?
Oh, so much.
I've
so
never seen and listen, Clemson was really, really good with Deshaun Watson, but people said, hey, they could take that next step. They can keep winning because Deshaun Watson came in on that back end and led the rebuild of Clemson. It wasn't like Clemson had 5 national championships when he got there. They had, one in the past 100 years? And you have Alabama, who has won consistent national championships since 2009, and they said, how does this team get any better? And Tua steps in, and they're like, this team might be unbeatable. And for the most part, they were.
Absolutely.
It took Trevor Lawrence, who is arguably the best quarterback of our recent time, to upend them, and it took injuries. And I think that's why Tua is number one here. And I've really, it makes me want to throw up to say that, but I put all my biases aside for our listeners out there. But yeah, I think Tua's got to be number one, man. And I like Jeudy a lot. I get where you're coming from.
I mean, I hear what you're saying about Tua, and part of me wishes I would have ranked him maybe number 2, but I don't know. Jerry Jeudy to me is just the standout star on that team. I don't think while I do understand Tua, don't let me undercut Tua at all right here. I mean, because I'm about to try to, but if he didn't have that receiving core of Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, and whoever else, I mean, insert name here. I mean, Alabama just has stable of wide receivers. Do you think that? I mean, I know he's going to be great, and I know he's going to be probably still the greatest quarterback in the history of Alabama. But do you think that he's number one on your list in that case?
Okay, so if they don't have all that, I get your argument here, but really and truly, I'm not super high on Devontae Smith or Henry Ruggs. I think Jeudy and Waddle are easily the best wide receivers, and I mean, we've seen Alabama have talent everywhere, man. And it's like, yes, you put AJ McCarron on this team, it's going to be good. But okay, so in your opinion, take Tua out, who was the best Alabama quarterback of the Nick Saban era?
That's tough, Zach, because
you have Jake Coker, Blake Sims, AJ McCarron, or Greg McElroy.
Yeah, none of those. Yeah, I get what you're saying now. Blake Barnett.
Yeah, Blake Barnett. There you go. That's the GOAT. But guys, that is a wrap on this episode. Only 3 segments, but these segments were jam packed, and we've been gone, man. We wanted to talk some football with you guys. We've had all these interviews come up, man. We wanted to come in here and do just, I guess, what would you call it, Brandon? An OG episode. We wanted to do just an episode with us
OG.
talking college football news. There was a lot we missed while we were gone, while we were dropping these interviews. Listen, guys, we are trying to get more guests. We're improving the podcast in ways. Merch is coming. Website's being updated. All kind of cool stuff's coming. Instagram, guys, at @the_Bluebloods. Facebook at the Bluebloods Pod. Twitter at the __ Bluebloods. We need to get on that, but that's another thing. The website, the bluebloodspod.com. Check us out. All the links to the episodes are right at the top of our website. We're available literally everywhere, guys. Go to Apple Podcasts, 5-star rating, guys. We love y'all for that. Subscribe to the podcast wherever y'all listen. We will be back Monday with another loaded episode, guys. So keep tuning in. You guys keep listening and subscribing. We're going to keep dropping episodes. We're approaching 100, guys. So big things on the horizon. But for right now, we out.